Hey, I just got back from a camping trip where I severely rolled my ankle and it's really sore. So I'm going to do a really laid back, cozy video today. So let's talk about some books that I have recently acquired, that I've recently picked up. The first book is Lord of the Rings, a bind up of all three of the books. So it's pretty big, but it's really beautiful. I really like this edition a lot. And I'm actually currently starting the third book, The Return of the King. I just finished The Two Towers. The first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, I really enjoyed it. It's probably my favorite out of the first two. And then with the second one, it was a bit more of a struggle, I found. The Two Towers, there was just a lot of parts that were a bit slow, just a little tad slow, and there wasn't much happening for 50 pages, 100 pages here and there. So I had a bit more of a rough time with the second one. I still enjoyed it. Both of them were definitely at least a 7 out of 10 for me, and probably the main thing I'm actually getting out of the books is that I think I'll really like the movies, because I've actually never seen the movies, and I just imagine that 3 to 4 hours per book in the movies is just going to be so much more fitting for the world that Tolkien is creating here, and it's just really going to suit the screen. Like, I know that the movies are going to be awesome, so this read of this series is just getting me really pumped for the movies essentially, so that should be really fun, and I'm excited to read the finale here, get into The Return of the King. Another book I recently acquired that I got for the book club I have with my friends is Carlos Tsukuru Tazaki and His Years of Pilgrimage by Haruki Murakami, who is my favorite author of all time. The last one I read was Kafka on the Shore about a year ago, and it was my favorite Murakami I had read so far. I think Kafka is one of his older books, and I think I've only primarily read his older books. I've read The Wind-Up, Bird Chronicle, Norwegian Wood, and Kafka on the Shore. And this is the first newer book I've read by him. This came out in 2013, so it's post IQ84, which is sort of like the cutting point of like old and new Murakami. And it's been a very different read for me. If anyone's a Miyazaki fan, it sort of reminds me of like Miyazaki's Wind Rises. It's like a later in the career piece from an artist that usually likes to do a lot of magical realism, that is doing a book that's set a lot more in just reality with no magical elements whatsoever really. And so that's sort of what you're getting with this book, but I didn't mind it actually. And while initially the lack of magical realism left me a little bored, honestly, because that's usually the main pull I have with Murakami and why I love his stuff so much, I came to actually love just the plot a lot. There's sort of a mystery element in this book. This plot / mystery involves these 4 friends and then the main character, and they're a group of 5 friends growing up, and the 4 other friends all have colors in their name while he doesn't, hence why he's called Carlos Tsukuru Tazaki. And then one day, out of nowhere, these 4 friends decide to cut him off altogether and never talk to him again. And so the whole book is sort of figuring out why that happened. It was quite intriguing. It's one of those books where it can be interpreted a lot of different ways, because that's what Murakami is all about. He's about things being vague, a little ambiguous, so you can't fully ever know exactly what happened. You're meant to just sort of have your own take on what occurred and what things meant, and that's my favorite thing about him as well, apart from the magical elements. I was pretty happy with this book when I finished it. However, after I finished it, that's when the true journey began between me and this book, and when it really got into my head. I couldn't stop thinking about this book for days, researching it, reading Reddit posts about it, and articles about it, blog posts, just trying to figure out what happened and what things meant and get my own sort of perspective, I guess, and consolidate my own perspective on what I thought happened and what I think is the real deal with this book, because it's just left up to interpretation and it's fun like that. So if you want a bit of a mind bender where you have to sort of figure out this puzzle even after you put the book down, this is a great book, I think. It's a little dull maybe when it comes to magical stuff compared to his earlier works, but there's other things in this book to take out of it instead. So you just gotta be in for that different type of ride with this book. So really happy that I read this book, and I'm happy to say that I enjoyed a more recent Murakami. The other books that I've recently acquired and have sort of read is Akira volume 5 and 6. I've read 5, but I haven't read 6 yet. So 5 was great. 5 was, it's an Akira installment, so of course I liked it. Was it the best Akira installment? No, definitely not. There's definitely other better Akira volumes, like 1 and 4 for sure. But 5 is, you know, that classic filler leading up to volume 6, the finale. So enjoyed it for what it is, and I'm really excited because it definitely hyped me up for my volume 6 read. However, this is not even opened, if you can see that, because I actually read a library copy that I borrowed, and then I purchased this copy after I had already read it through the library. And then with volume 6, I also picked that up when I picked up volume 5, like my own copy of it, and so now I can read my own personal copy of volume 6. Really excited to get to this. It should be quite a finish, I would imagine, and then I want to react to the anime. I want to watch the anime for the first time. I've heard so many good things about the anime. I've really enjoyed the manga. This should be awesome. Next book I got is a book that I loved as a kid, and I haven't read it in the longest time. It's Once by Morris Gleitzman, who is an English-born Australian author, I believe, and this is part of a trilogy. I'm sorry if there's a fourth and I don't know about it, but what I know about is Once, the first one, then the second one, and now the third one. Those are the ones that I read as a kid. I loved them. They were great. They're about World War II and the effects it has on children, like the child experience of World War II. So it follows a kid living through World War II and some other kids that he also befriends. It's very sad, of course. It's a World War II novel, but I haven't read this book in so long, and I saw this book in like a library book swap in my apartment building, so I thought I'd pick it up. I always try and see if there's any secondhand books that I can pick up that I want to have in my collection, because it's obviously better to get books secondhand than firsthand. Of course I would pick this up if I saw it, and I really want to reread it. That would be awesome. The other book I got from the secondhand library swap downstairs is The Riders by Tim Winton. This is another book that I read about 10 years ago now, and I just never owned it myself. I think it was my mum that recommended it to me, and so I read it when I was a young teen, I think, and I actually really enjoyed it. Tim Winton is also an Australian author, and this is the only Tim Winton book I've ever read, actually. And the reason that this book really stuck out to me when I read it was because of the mood. Like, the atmosphere and vibe of this book is really strong. I still remember how it made me feel. Fred Scully can't wait to see his wife and daughter. He's got a new life for them all worked out. He sweated on this reunion. The doors at the airport hiss open. Scully's life falls apart. And that's the premise of the book. It's very intense, very moody. Moody is definitely the word I would use for this book. You follow this man and he's quite sad for most of the time in this book, and so it's sort of similar to, it's actually really similar to the mood of this book, to a mood of a lot of Murakami books. You feel really isolated because you're just stuck in these minds of these guys that don't really know what's happening. They don't have the full picture, and that's where the mystery elements once again come in with this book, and I like that. I really like a very vague, subtle mystery interwoven into the plot of books. But yeah, some books just stick with you, and some you just completely forget about, and I've never forgotten about this book. I don't think I ever could. The last books are books I'd really like to get to soon. So the first book is Breasts and Eggs by Meiko Kawakami. This is another Japanese author, and so I really wanted to pick up this book because it has a little quote, breathtaking, from Murakami. So of course I want to read a book that's praised by Murakami. I don't see his praise on many books that I see in the store, because I just popped into a store to see what they had, and I saw this book sitting there. I never heard about it before, and I saw Murakami and I was like, oh my god, really? I also love the layout of it. I love the look of it. And I believe this book is about 3 women that all have to like live together because of some specific circumstances. They all get like bunched together and have to live together for a bit. This book is a radical and intimate portrait of what it is to be a woman in contemporary Japan. Also, it's a debut, so that's why I haven't probably heard of this book until I saw it in the store. So of course I would want to read this book. I had a great time in Japan when I visited, and for the most part, I love Japan, the country. I would love to learn more about their culture and read more fiction that is centered in Japan, because that's part of the reason why I like Murakami a lot, is because I just love the setting of Japan. It just has such a strong ambience. Oh my god, there's another Haruki Murakami quote on the back. I can never forget the sense of pure astonishment I felt when I first read Breasts and Eggs. Murakami, you need to stop. I'm going to be too hyped for this book. And the last 2 books I got were my 2 non-fiction picks. So first, I got crosswords. I got Collins Coffee Break Crosswords Book 3, 200 Quick Crossword Puzzles. I want to get into crosswords. I want to be better at crosswords. Sort of like my chess ambitions that I talked about in my last book video. I really want to get better at crosswords because I just want to be one of those people that has good vocab. And so I feel like the only way to get better at crosswords is to practice, practice, practice. So I'm going to do 200 quick crossword puzzles, and I would imagine that at the end of 200 crosswords, I would be better than at the start of the 200 crosswords. write, I think I'd be pretty hopeless if I don't improve after going for this entire book. And then the last book I got, the other non-fiction pick is, I don't know if you can count a crossword puzzle book as a non-fiction book, but it's not a fiction book, right? So that's what non-fiction means. So this is The Body Keeps the Score, Mind, Brain, and the Body in the Transformation of Trauma. And this is by Bessel van der Kolk. So the reason I picked up this book from the store is because I read Why Do We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Even though it was a little boring, I felt like I learnt a lot from reading it. So I went to pick up another. It's called Penguin Psychology book. So I wanted to pick up another book that is the same edition of a topic that I'm really interested in, and I'm really interested in sleep, and another topic I'm really interested in is trauma. And it's meant to move away from standard talking and drug therapies and towards an alternative approach that heals mind, body, and brain. So I really wanted to understand what they exactly meant by that. And just to hear what someone with decades of experience in this field of work has to say about it. Use reading as a tool for learning. And while I still feel like fiction is inherently more superior, I do still like a bit of non-fiction sprinkled in there, and so this is the book. So those are all the books that I've currently purchased recently, and so I hope you've enjoyed this book update for what I have been acquiring, and let me know what you've been reading. If you have any other recommendations or opinions on the things I've talked about today, in the comments, and until next time, bye!